Okay. First of all, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And it's my pleasure to spend the next couple of hours talking about something which I have been thinking for the last probably 25 years in various forms. Moment I talk about, first of all, people don't understand why a business school professor talks about Bhagavad Gita of all. Well, people think these are all about religion and so on. You know, that's not what it is. There's a great deal of interesting things that one can see. I mean, it so happened I chose a couple of texts and then I've been doing a lot of research on that. Anyway, what I choose to do with you is talk about what I call it as inspirational leadership, which is very, very important today. I would request you, let's not have it as I talk for 90 minutes and then we have a QA. I'm not interested. Let's share. In fact, I would also love to learn from you. I'm sure you bring a lot of experience from your side. So please feel free to discuss. Stop by, let's discuss and then keep going. I think I would be more happy to do that rather than finishing my quota of transparencies. Yeah? Okay, I have three things to do with you. First thing is I want to talk about the context. I think this is not, take it up further. Okay. First thing is I want to talk about the context for leadership because things are a little bit of slightly different variety now. So I first want to talk about what is this context for leadership that we are talking today. And then I want to talk about this animal called ancient Indian wisdom. Because the top of the list that Indians don't know is about ancient Indian wisdom. So therefore I want to little bit talk about that. Because with that context only I can bring my ideas. Then I want to talk about leadership. I would predominantly draw from Bhagavad Gita because I find fantastic ideas from Bhagavad Gita, which are all quite thought-provoking for us. So I want to draw from Bhagavad Gita and then maybe share some ideas. So that's the plan for me. So let me start with the context. There is a great deal of research going on. If you just get into some published databases and really search, you will actually get hell a lot of material. Nevertheless, I think the top of the list that I see is increasingly people are talking about deprived meaning in the workplace, which is very, very bad, which is very dangerous if you really ask me, because I need to spend 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours, at times 12 hours, and that I'm going to do for maybe 30 years. And if I don't find meaning to do that, that's a very serious issue. First of all, it introduces a lot of challenges. It actually creates stress, mental stress, job burnout. All these are related to that. So one predominant thing people discuss all over the world is that there is a deprived meaning at workplace. And these are all from papers. I just pulled a few of them. A growing number of dissatisfied employees complaining about deprived meaning. Many are talking about that. American managers want a deeper sense of meaning and fulfillment on the job, even more than the time off and the pay, that they are getting. And there are several voices which say, can you provide an opportunity for spiritual and personal as well as financial growth? It's not just about productivity numbers and payouts. There are a few more dimensions. Can we really look at that? These kinds of questions are coming quite often. Otherwise, it looks like we are wasting too much of our time on our lives because we are spending a lot of time. Professional life seems to take a lot of time for many of us. Extended work hours, work overload, leading job burnout and mental stress. It's a very big area. There are enormous research of different varieties that I actually see. I've just pulled a few bullets just to get a sense of what we are talking. The other thing people are talking is time affluence is more important than money affluence. We have traveled a lot of ground on money affluence. People are saying No, I don't need money. Can you give me a time for myself? Can you give me time so that I can spend with my family? Or I can do things which I love the most? These voices are getting stronger. I don't think we can afford to just brush it under the carpet. People are realizing time affluence is far more valuable than money affluence. This is another broad story which I have been reading, looking at different kinds of research and so on. Then there is a lot of accusation on business schools. You guys are teaching things which are just all about carrot and stick and all that, which are all fine. I think we have covered enough ground. What are you guys doing? Why are you not talking about much broader things? So these are some of the issues people are talking. If you just Google, if you have the right database, in the last 5 years, you will not be surprised. You will find 5,000 papers written on surveys, on research, on talking to people, all kinds of things, which are all circulating on various dimensions of this. So this is a very interesting thing which I found in Financial Post. So according to it, there is a two-stage journey to this workaholic business, or these people who take work very seriously, and they are now told that's the only thing, that we need to really do things in a particular way and so on. So there are several questions. Do you neglect your health to pursue work activities? Do people whom you love frequently complain you work too much? You can start asking how many of these questions you are checking. So the more you are checking, looks like you are a confirmed workaholic. So it's a kind of a simple checklist which says, how do I know I am a workaholic? There are things like this. Do you work longer and harder than most of your peers? Some people have that feeling. They just can't do anything but keep working. It's just a certain state of mind which they have gotten into. So there are things like this. Could not work the way you do now. You feel emotional letdown. In fact, people are talking about vacation sickness. There are papers, there are studies which say some people are not able to vacation. Because the last point, they feel let down if they are not working. So they have gotten into stage 1 of this. So that will take us to stage 2. I call it as one-outs. Because this needs to somewhere go to a different kind of a thing. So you can't concentrate, you have too much to do, feel guilty, you're physically and emotionally exhausted, a whole lot of things. You can't sleep. You also get sick a lot, you don't have a life outside of work. So, unfortunately, lots of people are getting in here. To me, these are very important agenda for leadership. These are not for those people. These are the agenda for leadership. If leadership does not understand I am walking my people who are below me into this trap, no productivity, nothing. It all will boomerang, and already there are signs of that happening, and so that's why I wanted to bring this, that there are things happening unwittingly. I'm not saying all these are done with the design. I'm not at all saying that. I am saying somewhere things are moving in a particular way. Just going in a particular way. So it's a tight balance everyone wants to do. It's all about career balance, work balance, family balance, life balance. So you keep juggling all these 4 or 5 balls and see what's happening and try to develop some expertise in the process. And I don't know what happens after that. Assuming you were able to master this art, then you have nothing for nobody and nothing for you to do. What do you do with that? Some people are saying like that. In fact, things have taken a little dirty twist in India. India is the diabetic capital of the world. India has the largest number of people who are contracting hypertension and diabetic in the age group of 20 to 30. That's a clear indication that there is something happening with respect to work which is getting into me, and some of the things that I am talking about. So there are so many studies. Very surprisingly, most of these studies says the most vulnerable group is young, educated, wealthy. It looks like a counterintuitive, but that's what it is. So I, as a professor, I'm asking, what is this education doing then? In fact, this bothers me a lot. Have we messed up the so-called education? Because if you become wealthy, your propensity to commit suicide is higher. What's going on here? Because rural people have lesser incidence of diabetes and hypertension. They have lesser propensity to actually commit suicide, although they have a greater reason to commit suicide, if you really look at it from that perspective and so on. Anyway, so numbers and diabetes, I just wanted to pop up some numbers rather than merely saying. I'm saying something is happening around us. It's happening in every organization. I don't think we can say, no, let me just wait and see what's happening. That's not going to work. We need to understand what's happening all around. So there's a lot of things happening, and this is the growth in diabetes that we have done in the last 15 years or so, 1980 to 30 years, last 30 years. This is the incidences of diabetes in this country, and so is hypertension and so on. Again, it talks about largest number of people with hypertension and so on. In fact, I keep telling my students, particularly we have a very dedicated group for software enterprise. We do a special program. So I keep telling, in fact, I really mean it. I've been teaching there for 23 years now. Something interesting I am seeing, although it is disturbing personally to me. People at 30 look like 40. It's a software group of people. At 40, they look like 60. I am not exaggerating. There is so much of wear and tear happening to the individual. Something is happening. There is so much of pressure. And to say these are individuals' problem, it is not a leader's problem, to me is a very simplified understanding of the problem. To me, it's a very simplified understanding, it's a simplified way of pushing everything under the carpet and say, no, this is not what it is. Because the traditional thinking and leadership is being challenged in a big way. So there are issues for individuals. So leader must understand that he is handling individuals in the first place and then employees. We are handling individuals. An organization has a number of individuals first. Then you say he is a director, he is a manager, all those comes later. There are some certain things happening, rumblings happening and so on, which are all pointing to certain questions which individuals are asking. They are not asking openly, but these questions cannot run away. So I think we need to understand that, what do you do about this stress? What do you do about this? What is this notion of work? Because work seems to be creating a certain kind of a paradigm, whereas what you see in Bhagavad Gita is a very different paradigm. Some of the nicest ideas in Bhagavad Gita are on how do you organize work, how do you approach work as an individual. All those are there. I'm not getting in that today because it's all about leadership I want to talk. How do I have a unique personal space? These questions are being asked in a lot of American organizations. People are talking about it. How do I create a personal space in the office, which is unique? Somewhere these thoughts are reverberating. There are experiments here and there. They are far and few between, of course. But that shows the direction on which things are a little bit moving. That's as far as individuals are concerned. Let's look at corporations. This is a study by a person, and this person was the executive director of planning of Shell. Shell is a 300-year plus company. And somewhere down the line there was this question, and the question is, how long will companies live? So Shell said, let's do a little bit of research, let's invest on that and try to understand how long will people live. So they did a lot of studies. They wrote a book called The Living Company, which was published by Harvard Business School Press. So I picked up a little bit of data from there to give a scorecard on organizations. So what he's saying is, one of the important conclusion he comes is most large, apparently successful corporations are profoundly unhealthy. Actually, this Fortune 500, it's time we remove the word fortune, because 1/3 of Fortune 500 are unfortunate because they disappear. I don't know what fortune are we talking. What is this meaning of fortune if something can live only for 10 years? That's what his study actually pointed out. That average life expectancy of Fortune 500 is 40 years. Your life expectancy is 80 years. The company's life expectancy is 40 years. 40% of all new-found companies will not, even see the light at the end of the day. In maintenance literature, they call there is a bathtub curve. The infant mortality then there is a useful time, and then the failure rate increases. Companies are infant mortalities, because if 40% of them die within the first 5 to 10 years, what are we talking? And 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies in 1970 vanished by 1983. So looks like there are issues for company level also, and not just issues at the individual. Maybe they are connected. So the study went on to say that we need to do something about this. This is not going to work because companies, people talk about work stress, they talk about power, struggle, cynicism, all kinds of things. Work environment that stifles rather than releases human imagination. All these are being talked about. So there are issues for organizations which everybody is talking. They are asking, what is this? So there is this leadership. Now in the last 2-3 years, we also know we had this LIBOR, London, interbanking rates. We had the Satyam episode. We had some big things happening. So leadership is crunching. There is a certain issue which is opening up all over globally. People are asking, what is this leadership that we are talking about? Where are we going? And what is the leadership that we need? Those kinds of questions are all in Occupy Wall Street, this, that. You just take stock of all of them. Somewhere things are popping up. There is one French economist who has written a book, which is enormous amount of discussion going on. He is blasting that this capitalism is not going to go anywhere. It's a very well written book. I missed the title now. If you Google, you will actually get into it. So people are asking, what is this great leadership? Where does it lie? I was a student of management 30 years back, so we were all taught what is called theory X and theory Y. Now theory X and theory Y is of no value. Leadership literature has moved. I will touch a little bit. I want to connect to the current and then get into Bhagavad Gita. First I want to say what's happening in the name of leadership, and then anyway. Learning and innovation skills, people are asking, how do I inculcate it? Organizations must be learning organizations. How do we do about that? That's one big issue people are talking about. Another issue is, it appears that unwittingly organizations are at war with nature. So you need to now do a carbon credit, you need to do this, do that, sort it out and create some mechanism by which you will live with. Because I am tired of this discussion that let us protect nature. I have done some research on large scale systems. I want to tell you, you can never protect nature. That's a very foolish idea. If possible, protect yourself. Because large scale systems, particularly natural systems, you just look at this Kedarnath. In 3 hours it restored it to 1869. It required only 3 hours to restore Kedarnath to a situation that it was in 1869. That's how large scale systems work. They have a self-correction mechanism and they know when to pop up and sort out issues. So these protecting nature are all very superficial ideas. Can you sensibly operate so that you can coexist with nature? That's a much better question. Anyway, so those kinds of issues are there. Today we'll confine to the leadership issue. We're not going to really get into the other things that we are talking about. So in a way, if you look at, and I'm seeing more in India, this is much more, sharper, that in the last 20 years, if you really ask me, this society, this Indian society is going through, in my personal opinion, a world of duality. On the left hand side, I have put a set of things which all look nice. More cars, more malls. If you come to IIM Bangalore Road, that Bannerghatta Road, which is one of the most notorious roads in Bangalore, there you have a Gopalan Mall, you have a Meenakshi Mall, there is 2 more malls waiting. I have sleepless nights when they are going to come up, because I can stop going out and try to be in my institute and see what I can do about it. So you have Gajalashmi, Garuda, Ramalashmi, all kinds of malls will come. So we have lots of selling, lots of malls, lots of cars. Maybe BAL will see lots of airplanes also. Good, we can come faster and all that is fine anyway. So more education, more educational standards, more knowledge, more wisdom, I do not know, but certainly knowledge part I can count. So anyway, so on one side things appear quite good, so-called apparently positive, but a coin unfortunately has 2 sides. So if you look at the other side, all that I talked about, diabetes, you have health problems, and In fact, I am very concerned about the notion of development the planners in this country have taken. The way I have understood development means 3 constituencies must be excluded. Constituency 1 is children below 5 years. Forget them. Constituent 2 is pedestrians. Forget them. If you build a pavement, all motorists will go on that. First of all, you will not have payments, but if you have payments, it is for motorists to sidestep the signal and do something about it. The third constituency, which is completely ignored, is people who are 65 and above. This society will be punished. You can't ignore these constituencies and call yourself developing. So the notion of development is very, very skewed according to me. Anyway, so there are issues, quality of life, monolithic structure to life, diversity is getting lost. The charm of this country has been diversity, now it's lost. Dramatically it is getting lost. We need to read Rajiv Malhotra's book called Being Different to understand what I am saying, because that really in great detail talks about an Indian approach to the challenge to Western universalism or something. We are actually losing and getting more universal in many things, whereas there was a charm of diversity which is gone and so on. So that is where we are. There is a world of duality. On one side seems like there are good things happening, but on the other side it looks like things are not working so well. I met with about 30 people from IBM, IBM all over the world. Yeah, from IBM all over the world. They came here, about 30 of them, automobile division, because I used to consult for them. So they asked, Professor, can you inaugurate this one day we are going to do? Can you talk about the next 10 years what will happen to automobile? I agreed, and then whatever I could, I put things together and I had a 1 hour talk. So after the talk was over, we broke for a cup of tea. 2 Germans came to me and said, Professor, I just want to make an observation. I said, please go ahead. He said, Professor, your talk was very interesting. I agree with many of what you are saying, but I want to make an observation. He said in 1903, this was roughly around 2003 or 2004. He said in 1903, the average speed of a car in San Francisco was 7 miles per hour. And in 2003, it is 7 miles per hour. Reasons are different. We may have a 250 brake horsepower engine today, but no space to go. So that's the development. Development appears to be there, but there is some counterforce which is working. So we don't know what is the absolute development that we are talking anyway. So there is a German philosopher. She actually talked about this. He said when men achieve security and welfare, now that they have solved all other problems, he said they will become problem themselves. This is what he said about 200 years back, roughly. There was a German book. In 1853, the English book came. The point is, on one side, if you grow and ignore the other side, this will not be growth. Somewhere it will challenge. So deprived meaning at workplace is what? There is a lopsided understanding of what to do in organizations. There is a lopsided understanding of what is the notion of overall success and growth and things of that kind. Now, this is something which Shankaracharya, who is the greatest management philosopher according to me, and the greatest psychologist, he wrote a commentary for Bhagavad Gita. The first sentence he said all this. One sentence, I want just show you the first sentence. It's a beautiful introduction, some 10 sentences. In the first sentence he said something which is exactly what Schopenhauer is saying here. I'll show you what he said in the first sentence. This is what he starts this whole commentary on Gita. He says, Duvido hi vedokto dharma. This Vedic knowledge says there are two things you have to do. Dvivida, two ways. You have to organize life in 2 ways. And what? He says pravritti lakshana and nivritti lakshana. He says there is something called pravritti, which is all about working, productivity, materialism, make more money. All that are very important. Shankaracharya says they are very important. But he says that has to be balanced with another thing called nivritti. Nivritti lakshana, he uses 2 technical words, abhyudaya and nishreyas. Abhyudaya is all about materialistic good, making a lot of money, having all comforts which are material in sense, and nishreyas is all of inner peace, happiness, contentment and so on. So essentially he fundamentally said, life is Jagataha Sthiti Karanam. That's what he says. Sustainability of systems. He says sustainability of the systems primarily rests on our ability to balance material quotient with a spiritual quotient. If you, either ways is not good is what he's saying. He's saying both are required. You need to have both. If you swing on one side, you will become unstable, is what he said about 1400 years back. With that, there are a lot of ideas which he went about, but I thought I'll just... So that brings us, what is this ancient Indian wisdom then? I want to now talk about a little bit on ancient Indian wisdom, because this is one sample from ancient Indian wisdom. Ancient Indian wisdom is something about which the first thing I know is from my 30, first of all, I have learned Sanskrit 35 years back. This whole lecture I could have given in Sanskrit. So why I'm saying this is I have read all these texts in original. I keep reading back, reading again, and so on and so forth. There is one thing which I have found, and nowadays I'm a little bit vocal about it. If you come and ask me about anesthesia, I'll say I don't know, because I don't know about it. If you ask about aerospace, I will fold my hands and say sorry, I don't know. If you ask about airport operations, little bit I may say, because I'm in operations, I can guess something. If you ask about polymer chemistry, I'll say I don't know, because I don't know. But there is one subject on which, without knowing anything, I will actually comment left, right, center. That is called ancient Indian wisdom. They say Bhagavad Gita is useless. So I actually ask people, how do you know? What have you read of Bhagavad Gita? Have you read Bhagavad Gita in original, or commentaries and all? I don't settle, because you don't even know. Commentaries is like seeing Raja Ravi Verma's beautiful painting in black and white photocopy. You will get substance but not spirit. If you look at a beautiful photograph in nice color photo in oil with a black and white photocopy of that, what will you get? You will get substance, not spirit. So that's how it is. So the ancient Indian wisdom is something on which I can tell anything that I want to say. I can say all these are nonsense without even having a slightest idea of what. That much I know. Most of the people engage into that hobby. But what is ancient Indian wisdom? I just want to, because with that context only I can bring Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise people think it is all religious. It is not. Because I want to show that. I'll use Bhagavad Gita and show you. Anyway, I have asked this question, what is ancient Indian wisdom? For the last 30 years, I have asked all kinds of people. Different kinds of people I have asked. So some people say science, mythology, meta-science, religious, matter of blind faith. That's one kind of a set of answers. Or where is it? People say, oh, it's not that, it is all extinct. There are all a few books in which you can memorize, and a few people in the world memorizes, and they keep it as a very exclusive property. That kind of a feeling. Too difficult, uninteresting. Why do we need it? Will it feed masses? In fact, this is one question the people have engaged me. I thumb the desk and say it will not feed masses. No basic research will feed any masses. Basic research will never feed any masses. If somebody come with it is all indirect effect. So I agree with them, it will not feed masses. But it will feed masses in a very indirect way. Quality of leadership can improve, or something can happen, this can happen, and because of that, it's like basic research. So like that there are things. Ground realities, our education system will not even take cognizance of it. And traditional wisdom must pass through a Western acceptance, otherwise we don't think there is any value in it. And the most disturbing thing is, after spending 12 years in Vedic studies, I meet a lot of these Vedic scholars. It pains me, because it's not that I felt they are uneducated. They are feeling they are uneducated. That's the situation. They think they are uneducated. If I think it may be a matter of a little bit of ignorance. Anyway, what I'm saying is it's all gone elsewhere. Now if you ask why did it go elsewhere, right? There was one little history, and then I'll go on. In 1813, the Queen of England wanted to give, I think, some 10 million pounds, big money. And Macaulay was asked, what do we do with this? Which language we must actually develop? How do you improve the culture? So he wrote a note. Because there were three possibilities. One is Urdu, another was Sanskrit, and third was English. These were the three options. So he wrote a 5-page note in which he actually argued we should go with English. And so that's how the whole education system, we are all part of that education system. I will show you a few sentences from that note, just to know from what perspective it was actually argued, because that explains all these that we are today. Whereas on the other hand, I'll come to that. Before that, 700 years back, Sayanacharya, who was the minister of Harihara and Bukka, could left, right, center quote hardcore scientific facts and explain, argue. History has a lot of recordings on this. That's why I'm quoting this. This person who exploded the atom bomb, right? Oppenheimer, Robert J. Oppenheimer. Apparently, when he exploded, he was great reader of Bhagavad Gita. He said there are a couple of shlokas in chapter 11 which comes to my mind. There's one shloka which says Sahasra Yugapat Udita Basa Sadrishi Sat Basastasya Mahatma. As though 1,000 suns are rising at the same time, whatever is the light. I'm now reminded of that shloka because I see that much of all that kind of a thing. But that's the situation. If you ask why this change and why we missed most of it, is because of a person who actually had a certain view about Sanskrit and Arabic, particularly Sanskrit. Just 3 sentences from that note. I downloaded the note from the archives. 3 sentences. He says, dialects commonly spoken among the natives of this part of India contain neither literary nor scientific information and are so poor and rude that until they are enriched from some other quarter, it will not be easy to translate any valuable work. So you need to clean up the whole tongue in some sense. That was one view he had. But the next 2 are equally, stronger in his thing. He said a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole of native literature of India and Arabia. So this is the challenge he threw. And this challenge is open for verification one way or the other. He says, I believe no exaggeration to say, all the historical information which has been collected from all the books written in Sanskrit language is less valuable than what may be found in the most paltry abridgments used at the preparatory schools in England. So there was a certain perspective with which he understood so that's the reason perhaps we missed most of it. That's the reason. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. But what is this ancient Indian wisdom? There is one thing which is very relevant to us for today's discussion. I will take Bhagavad Gita to explain it. The thing which most people have not understood is ancient Indian wisdom is a 3-in-1 story. If you take one shloka, Mahabharata, or Ramayana, or Upanishad, or Gita, or you take anything. If you take one shloka, it will have 3 dimensions. It is the eye of the beholder. If you don't see it, you will miss it. What are those 3 dimensions? One is a religious angle. There will be a religious angle. There will be a spiritual angle. And there will be what I call it a secular angle. In fact, when I teach in IIM Bangalore, I use the secular angle in a big way. Today I am going to use only the secular angle. I am going to tell you how it makes sense for me to organize my way I do things. How do I improve productivity? How do I, these are questions which doesn't fit into religious or spiritual. I call it as secular. The second thing which I find in ancient Indian wisdom is people say they're all irrelevant and old, we don't need it. My understanding has been on the contrary. There are lots of relevant thoughts. So I will take 2-3 shlokas from Bhagavad Gita to articulate what I have claiming here. Because that's the approach with which I have read the Gita. In addition to I am a spiritual person, I am a religious person, that's all right. I am also a person who is a professor of management and I am doing research there and I want to look at this also from that perspective. Now let's take, this is a very famous shloka, everybody knows. It's a title song for Mahabharata serial. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamiham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami. It's a very famous. And there is an interesting context to this shloka. This is in chapter 4. First 3 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, this Krishna and Arjuna are talking. Absolutely no clue of anything. Arjuna is talking to his cousin. Krishna is replying to his cousin. This is how, there is no any explicit mention of anything. Moment chapter 4 comes, first 2 slokas is complete discontinuity. First shloka Krishna says, Arjuna, what happened? I taught yoga millions of years back. And to Vivaswan taught it to Manu taught it to kings. Over time, all got corrupted, start spinning. Arjuna couldn't understand what is going on here. So he asked a question there. Yes, katam etat vijaniyam tvam adav proktan. How do I know you told at the beginning? Me. We are here and you are now talking about something you told several, millions of years back. In reply to that, he says, I am an avatara purusha. That's where the shloka comes. He says, don't look at me as your cousin anymore. I am actually an avatara purusha. Whenever dharma goes out of toss, I will come, I will sort it out. Avatara. This is a strict religious idea. You believe in God, this shloka makes sense. If you don't believe in God, you don't find any sense out of this shloka. Because it says reincarnation of God. Correct? This is one shloka. This pair of shlokas I use quite often in my management literature because most of the principles of economics are contained here. So now I will show you the other part. It all depends on our ability to see that here. This shloka talks about what is called system stability and feedback control. In your maintenance, parlance in your aerospace, you have to keep systems under control, and system goes out of that, you need a feedback loop, and the feedback loop feeds back. On that, the control system operates on the system and brings it back to stability. That's exactly what he's saying. In economics, if you take price and demand, supply, price, if government comes in and says, I will now put a minimum support price, to me that's the avatara purusha there. It is restoring the equilibrium. What he is talking about is restoring equilibrium. Restoring equilibrium is a management principle. It has nothing to do with religion. Every system will go out of task under certain conditions. And when it goes out of task, there is a regenerative point to bring it back. And you know what is the most elegant expression of this, particularly in Bangalore? One four-way will be a gridlock. All educated people will go and completely lock themselves into the four-way junction. No car can go any side. It's a perfect gridlock. One fellow from the Halli, one fellow from the village who neither owns a car, he doesn't benefit anything out of this traffic jam getting cleared. One fellow will come and then clear it. To me, he is avatara purusha. He is avatar. That is the meaning in this shloka. It's not just a religious idea. It says that without regenerative points, no system can be in state of control. No system can restore its equilibrium. That is what he is saying here. That's a secular idea. But I use this for several. I gave a couple of examples. There are plenty of. There is one important principle called prisoner's dilemma in economics. That also comes out of it. Anyway, I am not getting into any of those at this point in time. I just wanted to demonstrate. This is a shloka in chapter 2. This is again a very famous shloka actually, those who know Bhagavad Gita. This shloka says, Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya, navani grinnati naroparani, tata sharirani vihaya jirnani, anyani sanyasi navani dehi. Krishna says, I have shirt. Vasamsi jirnani. Jirna is gone. All worn out. He says, my shirt is worn out. What do? I just throw it. In fact, I have been asking people, how many of you conducted a condolence meeting because your shirt was torn? I mean, it's a laughable idea actually to even think about it. Krishna says, that's what soul does. Soul says this body, there's a spiritual idea here. If you believe in what is soul, rebirth, this is an Indian paradigm and so on. He says, just like the shirt is torn, if the shirt is torn, you just throw it. You say, take another shirt. Navani grinnati, new one you wear. In the same way, the dehi, which is the soul, which is in the deha, which is the body, and the body is useless. It's not worn out. A 5-year-old boy or a girl can die in an accident. So it is not worn out. There the meaning is, the soul said, the use of this for me is over. So it's obsolete. Obsolete is a better word rather than worn out. It's obsolete, so I just throw it. So that's the idea he is actually saying here. Now, I use this shloka in my innovation lectures because there is an important principle here. It's a very wonderful idea contained in this. What he is saying actually is, in order to be successful and sustainable, if an organization has to be successful and sustainable, the most important thing is you have to discard your old mindset and go after a new mindset. Just like throwing the old shirt and wearing a new shirt is a measure of progress in that limited sense. In the same way, if organizations have to progress, they have to discard old mindset and imbibe on new mindset, otherwise such organizations will never grow. Will never grow. That is the point. So it's all about change management, it's all about competitive advantage. In fact, I must tell you, take a slight digression. I was a retainer for Deloitte Consulting, San Francisco for about 2 years. First we did a work on business model innovation. I wrote a paper on business model innovation, so one person called, said, Professor, can you be part of our team? We are also now developing it's 10 years back, developing a new research, thought leadership initiative. I said, all right. But I said I would not like to travel. We found a way of, I will send a couple of PPTs, decks, then 2 days before or a day before, then we will have a discussion around that. Initially they were tapping ideas from me, initial part of what was like that. So after a first session, I told them that if you want to progress in business model innovation, thought leadership, you must know the concept of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, I told them. So they were a little curious. I said, what is this Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva? I said, I'll explain that. So I said, in this country, there is this Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva as 3 ideas. One is Srishti, creator, Sthiti, sustain, and destroyer. So the Shiva is called the destroyer. But I told them the Shiva is called destroyer. Meaning of the word Shiva is a Sanskrit word. Shiva means Mangala, good. And I told them there is a synonym. Sahasranama is called synonyms. Alternative names for the God, we have 1008 of them. I told them the Shiva is called destroyer in our scheme of things. If you take the 1008 names, 70% of them means good. So I told them, you are now tell me what is the idea here. Please reflect on this. Why are we calling some God as a God of destruction? And then all his synonyms are good. He will do Sham Karoti iti Shankaraha. He will only do good. Sham Bhavati iti Shambho. If you think of him, good things will happen, but he is also called God of Destroyer. In 1950, he wrote a great paper called Innovation Through Creative Destruction. Shiva Tattva is required in every organization. Destruction is very, very important. What you destroy is only the question. If you don't destroy, that's what he's saying. Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya. If you don't throw old ideas and all that. So the crux of innovation lies in this shloka actually. It is not just a spiritual idea. There are many dimensions of this kind and so on. Anyway. One more shloka, just to tell you what is this Gita, ideas of ancient Indian wisdom. In 3rd chapter, Arjuna asked a question. He asked a very interesting question. First of all, Arjuna never lay low. He was actually asking questions. Although he was having a certain trouble in trying to fight, and that's a story part of it. Anyway, there's a question here. He says, Atakkena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichanapi varshneya baladiva niyojita. The second line is very interesting. First line he says, some people do mistakes. I mean, this applies for managers, it applies for a father, it applies for a spouse, it applies for a teacher, it applies for everybody. Question is simple. Why did I commit a mistake? When I think about it, there's something bad happened in the office. I come home. I download the whole thing on my 4-year-old daughter. It's a stress which I pass. That child, did small little tantrum, which is very nice thing about a child. And I am in bad mood. My spouse, just blast everything over. This question comes tomorrow morning. We all ask this question in our heart. Why did I do this? Same thing happens, I picked up an argument with you in a meeting, which we crossed a little. It had nothing to do with I have no respect. Tomorrow morning I think I should not have done. This question will come 10 million years later also this question will come. Don't think this is an old thought. So, papam charati purushaha kena prayuktaha. Who is making him to do? Why is he doing? That's the first line. Second line is very interesting. He says, Anichan, I didn't have the icha, I didn't want to shout at you. Retrospect, I don't want to, actually I thought about it. Anichanapi, hey Varshneya, that is adjective for Krishna, Baladiva Niyojita, it looks like I have become a victim of situation. Somebody has pushed me into the situation. So this question, if somebody says it is an irrelevant question, I would ask them, you better check. 10 million years later also, as long as human beings live, they have moods, they have all that. That is what he is answering. He talks about the psychology of what triggers these questions. They are all part of the story which he is answering. Anyway, so far to just tell you. So the point I am trying to make is ancient Indian wisdom has to be read with a lens which has three angles. If you read it in just one angle, one can say it is useless, it is uninteresting, all that we can do. But if people know how to read it from three different angles, I find enormous amount of secular ideas there. You don't have to bring religion. In fact, I keep telling, I don't have to actually bring the notion of Krishna. That are all for the historians. Whether Krishna existed, whether he existed in 3000 BC or 7000 BC. That's for the historians to do research. Why am I bothered? It's a case study for me. Is there interesting idea here? I am a business school professor. Is there an interesting idea here? I want to pull it out. I don't want to waste my time whether, in fact, I am not even interested whether Krishna indeed existed, Arjuna existed at all. That may be my personal belief system. That's all right. I don't need any of them to actually talk some interesting case in points from the story. So that's the perspective with which I am actually looking at ancient Indian wisdom, and that has phenomenal scope for looking at it. Okay. Now let's move on to leadership. I read a very interesting paper in Harvard Business Review a few years back. The paper was titled In Praise of Incomplete Leader, written by Peter Senge, big man. He wrote a paper called In Praise of Incomplete Leader. And his argument was very interesting. I think it's a very good argument. Basically what he is saying is one of the mistakes leaders do. See, a leader needs 100 things. He needs to be very sharp, he needs to be very humanly, he must have analytical skills, he must be able to have a vision. There are a long list of 20 things. Peter Senge's argument is simple. The biggest mistake a leader does is he wants to become all of that. He says that's not possible. He says that person who rightly identifies these 20 things are required, and out of these 20 things I have 5, 6, 7, whatever. Step 1. Out of these 20 I have these 7. These 13 I will find from my people around. He says they are great leaders. That is the paper. The crux of the paper, I want to put it in a nutshell rather than talking about the paper. Essentially he said, a great leader is one who knows he is not everything. Therefore, he will know what he has to gather from his group. He will make a good cut. This was his argument in the paper. So the paper said, broadly, put 4 categories. He said a leader must be very good, have good intellectual capability, which will help him for sense making. A leader must have a lot of imaginative powers, which gives him the power of visioning. Leader must have the operational know-how so that the logistics of what's happening can be flawless. A leader must have interpersonal skills so that he can relate. Therefore, he said, incomplete leader is one who doesn't, there are many sub-items, I'm not getting into it. He said an incomplete leader is one who knows that I don't have every one of these, but I know what I can do. Now what I am going to do, so this is a very interesting idea. Now I want to quickly take you through chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, where there is a very big question of leadership which is being challenged. To give you a little, all of us know the story, to give you a background, please I want you to remember 2 things. First thing is, let it all be stories. It's a case study for us. Don't worry about the truthful of it. We are interested in the case study. First of all, Pandavas never wanted to fight. If you read the Mahabharata, the last thing they wanted to do was actually fight. Krishna went 2 times. He tried to say, give us 5 gramas, give us 5 houses, give us 5 square meters of space. These are all story. The idea behind it is not that at the slightest opportunity Pandavas said, let's wage a war. Keep this in mind. Pandavas never wanted to fight. They wanted to avoid war. They tried their level best. It went to such a level of breach. It's a breach of contract. This is nothing but a classic case of breach of contract. You said I have to do something as a punishment. Once I do, we will come back and today you can take to the court on law of sale of goods act or something, law of contracts you can take. It's a breach of contract. Right? Still they wanted to avoid. It went to such a level of unreasonable behavior on the other side, finally they decided to fight. Remember this. Point 1. Point 2. Arjuna is depicted as a great warrior. You look at this character, this Vyakti as a character in this case. He is depicted as a great warrior. One of his adjectives is Savyasachin. With left hand he can fight. He doesn't need to fight with the right hand. That is the point here is he is a great fighter. And in our scheme of things, a Kshatriya is supposed to fight for a rightful cause. You have to protect the wrong things. That's why you are a Kshatriya. Otherwise, you are not needed. That's true of a leader and a CEO of a company also. If you can't protect your people, you are not worth the salt as a CEO. So these are the 2 points with which so much of contemplation they came to fight. Now I'll show you 10 slokas. You just see what happened to this person. And then I want to talk about leadership a little bit. He comes, first 25 slokas in chapter 1, these are all who is standing where, what are all the order and the pecking order, all these are described. Then Arjuna says to Krishna, Krishna is a charioteer. Arjuna tells, can you please take the chariot to the front? This side is Pandavas, this side is Kauravas. Can you please bring the chariot? He says, Senayor Ubayor Api. So he came here, he looked on both sides. And what did he see? He saw all these. Tatra Pashyat Stitan Partha, Pitra, fatherly figures. His father-in-law is here, son-in-law is there. It's full of, the story is full of like that. Okay? Then Pitamaha, grandfather is there. My grandfather is on the other side. I am going to kill him. That's the situation, how it has unfolded actually. Right? Acharya, my teachers are on the side. Drona and Kripacharya are all on the other side. Arjuna has to kill them. Kill them meaning, you have to fight against them. Right? And then Matula, uncles, bratra, brotherly, cousin brothers, Putran, Pautran, son, grandson, Abhimanyu, all those characters are there. And not on one side, Suhritas Chaiva, good-hearted, he is close to my heart. It so happened he decided to go to that side. That kind of stories are plenty in that war, before the war prepared. So, Senayoho Ubayoho Api, and both sides he saw it. This is the starting point for this so-called leader. Let's see what he did and what kind of things happened to him. First thing he says is, Sidanti Mama Gatrani. He says, I am sweating like anything. My hands are shaking. My skin is burning. That's all he says. Mukam cha parisushyati, brahmativa me manaha. My head is spinning. He says, oh, this is too much for me to handle. Whatever it is, we chose to fight. We came finally, with a lot of deliberation we did. We finally came. I saw on both sides, this seems to be too complicated. So he says, Vepatascha sharira me, Roma harsham. It is a hair-rising experience for me, for a wrong reason, not for the right reason. It's a hair-rising experience. I don't know what to do. Things are very bad. All that he is saying. I shiver, my Gandhi was slipping out of my hand, right? Skin burns. I cannot go through this experience. My mind is spinning. My head is spinning. I don't know what to do. It's the first reaction. Then slowly a lot of thoughts come to his mind. He says, Nimittani cha pashyami. Oh, now I know what is going to happen. Right? Nimittani cha pashyami. I know everybody is going to die. I am seeing this, what is in stock in the future doesn't appear to be very great. All that he is saying. Right? Na shreyaha anupashyami. I don't see anything good. I am not seeing shreyas. I am not at all seeing good. What I am going, this is a visioning. Leader is now visioning. Please see. He is creating a certain vision. Right? And hatva swajanamahave, killing my own people, swajana. Right? Na kankshate vijayam Krishna. He says, I don't want this victory here. What is this victory in which I have to kill my grandfather, my teachers, people whom I like? For some reason we picked up an argument and we thought it was all that. Now I am at the crux of action. Right? He says, Rajyam Sukha Anicha. I don't want the kingdom. I don't want this kind of peace of mind and so on. He says, leave me here. I don't want all this. This is where he starts. Then he makes 4 beautiful arguments. Okay? The first argument he makes is, I am not motivated for war. Why are you pushing me? That's the first argument he made. He argued why he has no motivation for war. The reason he said was, he says, we are all fighting for the kingdom. Now I am saying I don't want the kingdom. If I don't want the kingdom, what is the context for fighting? We all started saying we want the kingdom. Now I am telling you I don't want the kingdom, so I have no motivation to fight. That's what he's saying. Now, Yesha Marte Kankshitam Na Rajyam Bhogaha. I don't want pleasure, I don't want kingdom. Right? Ime Avastita Yuddhe. This kind of avastha in which I have to go through and do yuddha and all that. Considering all that, my mind has changed now. Earlier I said, but I don't need now. This is what he's saying. Why? Acharyaha, Pitaraha, Putraha, Tataiva Pitamaha, grandfather, teacher, fatherly figures, all those Sambandhis, wedlock. Sambandhis are on all sides, shalas. We tell the same thing. He says, you see, this is what it is now. I didn't think about it at that time. I am now seeing the reality. Therefore, I am not interested in the kingdom. If not, I am not interested in the kingdom, how can you force me to fight? So that's the first argument. It goes on. Etan na hantum ichame. I don't want to kill them. Gnatopi. Even if I am killed. Even if I am killed, I am all right. I don't want to kill them because I don't see anything sensible in this whole idea. Right? He says, Trailoki Rajyasya. Even if we say by killing all of them, I will become the Lord of the three worlds. Even if I will become the Lord of the three worlds, I don't need it. Because I don't see any merit in this whole argument. While we all contemplated strategy making is over, no action. He says no. All that he says. Because it is papameva ashrayet asmat hatva. By killing all these people, we will incur a lot of sin. Why do I do it? I know very well those people don't know, that's their problem. But I know. I know what is right and what is wrong. They may or may not know, but I know. Having known it, I have to take a position. Therefore, so all these are one set of arguments where he is logically arguing that no motivation for war. Then there is a second argument. He says it's not proper to engage in war. Why? He says, Swajanam hi katam hitva. Tell me, how can you have peace and happiness by killing your own people? It's a question he asked Krishna. Krishna, I am asking a simple question. By killing your own people, can you be peaceful? It is very illogical. So therefore, there is no scope. We are talking of something which is illogical, according to me. So he says, Swajanam hi katam hitva sukhinasyama madhava. Then he says, lot of people will die. Kulakshaya kritam dosham. So I would have killed a lot of people. That I will, tons and tons of sins I incur. They are all not worth of the cost-benefit analysis he is doing. He's saying the benefit is not worth the cost. Therefore, I don't want to do. So all that he says. Right? Kulakshaya kritam dosham mitra droha chapatakam. I have been, my friend is on the other side, I have done a biggest betrayal to the friend, all those kinds of issues are there, therefore, no. So he says it's not proper. It's very inappropriate to actually fight. That's the second argument he made. He says, are you not satisfied with this? I will make you another argument. He says, war will create a much bigger problem. In fact, I was stunned. When I read this shloka, I went and read in the internet what happened in Czechoslovakia and then Gulf War. Most of what he has said in this shloka happened. In fact, war, what is the number one war crime? Indiscriminate raping of women. That is the number one war crime, which is what he is saying. He is saying women will become insecure. You will create such a mess in the society that you would go to a very different plane which is not worthwhile, is the argument. And that's the argument he made. I actually read quite a bit and it actually linked with many of the things he was saying. I was a little curious. I went back and read in Wikipedia, I went and searched and so on. He says, Kulakshaye pranashanti kula dharmaha. All the social order will go because there are lots of orphans, there are lots of widows and widowers. Whole thing will go for a mess. You have upset the apple cart by creating this so-called war. Dharme nashtam kulam krishnam adharmo hi bhavyati. Adharmo bi bhavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriyaha. Women will become very insecure. That's not a good idea in a society. Right? And strishu dushta svashne jayate varna sankaraha. Everything will get mixed up. Social equilibrium will be disturbed. That's the varna sankara. Will happen. He goes on arguing that. He says, we'll all land in Naraka if we do it. And then he says, nobody will be able to offer oblations to their parents. Those kinds of ideas are also there. He says, Doshaihi eteihi kulagnanam varna sankarakarakaihi utsadyante jati dharmaha kula dharmaha. Social order practices, customs, all of them will be destroyed permanently. Sashvataha. He says it is not a temporary destruction. It is so large scale that can happen that it will become permanent. And I don't think we should do a war in which you create such a social disorder which will be hard to recoup. It's a very intellectually convincing argument actually. So all that he said. Okay? Then two things happened to him. The next thing that happened, with this the chapter closes. First thing that happens is, he says, oh, I have gotten into a situation which I should not have gotten in the first place. Aho bataha mahatpapam kartum vyavasita. We got into an action, we are on the threshold of doing an action which is completely wrong. Correct? And why did we do it? We wanted the kingdom. And he wanted to destroy so many people for a kingdom. So this thought engulfs him much strongly, and he did something. What he did was, he said, I am not having my bow and arrow with me, right? And those fellows are all ready to fight. I'll be extremely happy if somebody will kill me. A great leader is saying, I want to get killed and I want to get disposed of the sin. That's what he's saying finally. He's saying, Yedi pap mam apratikaram, I don't have any support because I kept everything away. Ashastram, I don't have any shastras with me. Right? Shastra pane hai, those people are all having all deadly weapons with them, they are waiting to fight. I'll be happy if one of them actually put down shastra and kill me. Right? This is what I call it as assassination of a role and a... there is a role clarity problem. A person who is supposed to fight has come to such a level, he says, I'll be too happy if somebody kills me. He doesn't want to fight. He wants to run away. Running away may look too hard. If somebody can kill me, I am okay. He has gone to that level. This is how the chapter ended. Then Krishna came in second chapter and gave him a punch on his nose. One statement was violently shaking him, and for which he again replied. What he replied was, again said the same thing. Katam Bhishma Maham Sankhe, how will I kill Bhishma and Drona and all that kind of thing. The story is, I want to ask you something. Please tell me, first of all I want to ask you, is Arjuna a leader or not? I have 3 questions. If you have answers, please tell me. First question is Arjuna a leader worth the salt or not? What do you think? And second question is, now that we are talking of incompleteness, assuming he is a leader, where is the source of incompleteness for him? Why is he not saying, let anything happen, I'll fight? We came for the right cause. We thought about it, contemplated. We avoided at every possible moment. Then only we have come here. Why am I running away now? So what is the source of incompleteness for him? That made him... Okay. One possibility he says he looked at only the negative consequences of the issue. So perhaps that might be the source of incompleteness. Yeah? He was emotional? Emotional fool, okay. That's interesting. Any other?
Not convinced about the righteousness of his cause.
Looks like he doesn't have clarity. So when he came to the point of action, he kind of got messed up. That's what you are saying, I guess, right?
He's checking the alternatives from Krishna. Is war the only solution? Is this the way to go about this problem? Or is it really required at this level? Or can we do something else?
Sir, this was elaborately discussed. We have come to a stage, 4 books of Mahabharata, if you read, you will come here. There are about 2000 pages which have gone already. What you are saying has already happened. So, it's all coming again. Any other view? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So, I will take his framework, Peter Sanjay's framework, and map this story on that. So, in a nutshell, this is what he did. When he was asked to deliver the goods, strategy thinking, prayer planning, everything is over. We have now come to the point of delivery. When you came to the point of delivery, you collapsed. And you brought arguments which are extremely difficult to shoot down. I mean, the arguments are very convincing. I didn't find anything seriously wrong in the arguments. There's a lot of sense in what he said. Still, Krishna made him fight. That's a story. So something must have happened in between, which is why I actually started reading Bhagavad Gita. My story started only with that. I was wondering, what is happening between these two stages? This fellow finally got up and said, let me do something about it. What happened, transpired in between? And how did he actually come out of some of the confusions he had and so on? In my consulting experience, I found a parallel to this situation. I have consulted, nowadays I have a little bit slowed down on this kind of consulting. What I have found is, this is what I find. The head leader, the CEO actually confronts a very difficult problem. This fellow is confronting the most difficult problem. Because at no cost I will kill my father. You give me a fortune, I will not kill my, that is where he is now. His grandfather is there on the, so I am with him. I am very sympathetic to him, actually speaking. So when a leader confronts a very difficult situation, there starts a huge internal conflict. Okay? That's what is making him see this very, very difficult. And he knows the solution. I have seen it in my consulting. Sometimes we know here is the solution. The problem is no doubt difficult. The solution is there, the solution is even more difficult. Correct? And so, but I don't want to go after it. That's the time I find the top managers use, in fact the brain works the best at that time. You know, this technology is not proven, this for 20 years it happened. Lot of homework to actually maintain status quo. Lots of, that's what his fellow also did. He thought about the issue so clearly and brought a set of arguments which are almost, you should nod your head and go. That's the end of the meeting. You pack off and run away. Over. That's what he was also trying to do in this case. So, you know, you start defending the status quo. And arguments are all very, so how do you defend status quo? You have to bring very compelling arguments. Bring compelling arguments, defend the status quo and maintain the status quo. And so what Arjuna is going through is honestly a tough decision. To me, a leader matters worth the salt only when they are able to solve tough decisions, not easy decisions. Leadership is tested only when there is a tough decision, not while there are simple decisions that any number of people will do. We are talking about what you do when there is a tough decision. Okay?
This is not the only war Arjuna fought. Why in the previous war he didn't face this?
Yeah, we'll come to it. We'll just come to it. So essentially, as somebody said, it started with the lack of clarity. Now leave the Bhagavad Gita and this story. This story can be attributed to any confusion in decision making in any situation. Oftentimes it starts with a lack of clarity, as somebody was saying. There is a lack of clarity which leads to lack of discrimination, and that lack of discrimination will make you less questionable about the mindset. That's why you become less questionable about the mindset. You become more defensive, you start becoming more defensive rather than really facing it. You become very faint-hearted. Krishna uses the word Hridaya Daurbalyam. Your heart is very weak. That's why you are not facing it, and you end up bad decisions. Now, the question that you asked in terms of why did Arjuna not face this before, I will go to Peter Sanjay's framework and let's put Arjuna into that framework. This is what Peter Sanjay said. He said there is a list of things. My biggest argument, not just using this story, my biggest argument is, if you ask where is the biggest contribution of ancient Indian wisdom, the biggest contribution of ancient Indian wisdom is there is not just the world outside, there is a world inside for every one of us. The problem Arjuna went through is not in the outside world. It was a problem he went through in the inside world. You and I go through a problem in our inside world. Who said we don't go through? When tough decisions come, it is not the outside world. It is inside. There is a world inside. You are not at, so if you are talking about relating, you may be, in fact I have seen, there are great communicators who is the biggest failure in his personal life. In office he does everything, and then one day he commits suicide. He didn't live through the challenge. Why? He couldn't relate to himself. He could relate to others. You take every one of these. Sense making, you can make sense of outside. Can you make sense of inside? The greatest contribution of ancient Indian wisdom is, it says that there is a world inside for every one of us as much there is a world outside. And very critical decisions or the seed from which it is calling is inside. I mean, we have our own experience. I don't have to explain it in great detail. We have experience, we need to relate it. So if you really take, all these are important. So the incompleteness that Arjuna went through, or the list of incompleteness that he is talking about, I'll map it not just the outside world. Relating is not with the outside world. If you don't know how to relate with yourself, you will be a split personality. You will have a serious problem in life. Outside you can put up a very nice face. If you are not able to relate with yourself, there is something called yourself. If you cannot relate to yourself, you will have a serious problem. That is what is being talked about. So what Arjuna is going through is, there is a war going inside, not outside. The outside war has not even started. There is a war going inside and he doesn't know what to do with that. He has not understood, you have to first handle yourself, then let's talk about handling, outside. That is the issue. So all these are very important. The only point I would make is, they are all to be related not only with the outside world, they are to be related to the world inside. This story in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita is, he didn't know how to relate it to the world inside. So he lost connectivity. And that's the end of the story. So can anyone be a leader when he is not in peace with himself or herself? Impossible. You may have the greatest degree, you may have all the power endowed on you. If you are not in peace with yourself, you can never be a leader. It will show up. It will show up in its own ways, in whichever dimension it has to show up, it will show up. That is the central issue here. So when you say sense making, he also did sense. Who said he didn't do sense making? It was so collapsing for him. The sense making was right, but he couldn't know what to do with that after that. It was just his world within was crumbling. That was his problem. He did the sense making, but after that he didn't know what to do. Right? He could not relate with himself. He was relating with so many other entities. He couldn't relate to himself, that's why it fizzled. So like this, there are issues. So the point is, a lot of our literature actually talks about this story very well. And they are very important. It cannot be ignored. And in contemporary literature, I don't see this at all. The contemporary literature talks about how do you relate with the outside. And completely ignore that you have world inside also. That's the issue. Okay. So I will now get into what is Bhagavad Gita actually saying. Now that this is what it is, what are some of the issues which I generally don't find in the current discussion in our practice and theory? Little bit I see here and there. I will relate them and then push it a little bit more with some of the ideas in Bhagavad Gita. First of all, to me, a leader is required for high performance. Leader is not required for performance. Managers are enough for performance. There's a difference between performance and high performance. And managers are enough for performance. A leader is required for high performance. And how do you differentiate? I try to put a few bullets roughly to articulate. Performance is all about growing 40% quarter and all according to my performance. They are not high performance. High performance is to make a firm live longer, very stronger, right? Living longer is very different from quarter to quarter guidance. I will give you a simple example. If I am a father, I have 5 children, you just think of this, and I have been retrenched. Because productivity, downsizing, I have been asked to go. One. Method two is, we will tell all of us, because that's what we do actually. You know what we will say? From tomorrow we'll cut one foot. Because there is no earning. We will see. We'll put the best foot forward, we will try to find a job. 6 months later, I didn't find the job. We'll eat once. Sir, 1/3 of India eat once in 2 days, sir. I don't know how many of you know. 1/3 of India eats once in 2 days. They are not committing suicide. They have so much of their world inside is very strong. World outside and all, they are least bothered. Their world inside is very strong. Who go to Orissa, 80% of Orissa eats once in 2 days. None of them are agitated about life. We can do a videograph study and do a panel discussion and say they are very agitated. They are not. That's a different story anyway. So I could have said, no, let us not eat one food. 6 months later, let us say, no, let's cut one more foot and put effort and get a job and then get back. That is, why I'm doing, because to me family is a living entity. It's not a quarter guidance entity. It's a living entity. So there is a lot of talk about organic relationship and looking at organizations as living entities. That is what will get high performance. Which means you have to give up profitability for 1 year. You have to give up, we are all, I call it as Goli Mardiya. Growth over last year, G-O-L-Y. वो तो गोली है, गोली मार दिया 10%, 20% something. That's very unrealistic. I'm not saying we should not grow. I'm saying we should have the ability to take when situations are there are a few companies which are doing very well. I am seeing companies, multinationals, they're typically on the European side, they're on the American side, they're able to do it. Anyway, so high performance is about living for a longer time. It's about value of outgrowing the targets and dualities, but more important is the last set of things. Create leaders who have extreme levels of passion and attitude and courage to do good to the entire system, firm and the environment, face the toughest challenges guided by role clarity, and enable everyone in the system to discover their happiness. Those are elements of high performance. The others are element of performance, where one can improve productivity, all that we can do, but this is actually high performance if you really ask me. So traditionally, leadership literature has moved. Traditionally, this is what we're thinking. A vast majority of companies all over the world still are in this paradigm. And what is that paradigm? What do you mean by leadership? The dominant thinking is leadership is all about responsibility and ownership. Right? I have the responsibility to take decisions and freedom to execute, and it is my responsibility to get the performance right for the organization. The my is in capital. Okay? I have the ability to get tasks done by the subordinates because I am endowed with position and power. So that will get me that. This is traditional thinking. A vast majority of leadership that is being practiced falls into this category, where it is one of responsibility and ownership, and in order that I have to deliver, I will be endowed with resources, position and power, so I will marry these two and get things done. Vast majority thinking is going like this. This is called market contract in our literature. That means employees will only have a market contract. For salary you give, I will work. You don't call of the inner voice and all will not work. But I will work. A good leader can get that part of it clean. They will do the correct work, what is to be done for that. Going out of the way and all will not work. But they may get this done well. That may be the kind of leadership that you can see. But leadership has been in the last 10-15 years, lots of discussion, some 27 theories have come in leadership. They're all really covering from all over the place and getting into a different kind of a situation. So old leadership was very individualistic. It was a leader-follower kind of a paradigm, primarily based on economics of cost, benefit kind of assumption and so on, setting goals, providing directions, and that was how it was. Now there are lots of things people are talking. They talk about servant leadership, transformational leadership. I will not get into all of them. Level 5 I will talk. Jim Collins is very popular. We will talk about level 5 leadership and so on. So they do a lots of these things, and they have twisted, they are actually changing the lens and saying something else. Where can you enable people, can you make them discover happiness, can get the spirituality, all kinds of things they are talking. And there are all kinds of experiments going all over. That's how the leadership is moving. So, there is something called authentic leadership, and transparency, rational, relational transparency, self-awareness and all that kind of thing. There is a spiritual leadership. Values, attitudes and behaviors are to be adjusted. Mind, heart, spirit, nice terms. Mind, heart, spirit all must fuse and all that. Question is, how will you do that? The nitty-gritty of it is still the theory has not moved. The theory is saying this is what we ought to be doing, and they are not able to say what will do that. What should I do to motivate for high performance, increase organizational commitment, personally experience joy, peace and serenity? So it is at that stage this is going. They're all changing course a little bit and talking about. They are at least saying these are the issues which we should bother about. Otherwise, things can go haywire. So I'll just skip this. Now, Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, which is a bestseller, came with, he said, what are the attributes of failed leadership and what are the attributes of good leadership. These are based on a past study of several firms and so on. So let us see what he is saying. He is saying, in his sample, why did he find leadership failed? He said, if these things happen, the leadership miserably fails. Larger than life celebrity. Leaders are too big and important, the rest are all extras. Star, starlet extras. So star, and then you have, it's a nice model. It's called genius with 1,000 helpers. That kind of a model, right? Concerned more with their own reputation for personal greatness. The I is a steel girder, big steel girder, I-centric leadership. It's all about I. Okay? I-centric leadership. Charisma, in fact, he makes a very interesting observation. 20 years back when I read leadership, they said charisma is a good thing, good positive thing about leadership. He is now saying charisma is the biggest liability now. Too much of charisma is this genius with 1,000 helpers will happen. So he says charisma is as much a liability as asset. If you have nearest doubt, iota of doubt, go and see this lady called Jayalalitha. Jayalalitha is one, all others are zeros. That's what M.G. Ramchandran also said 25 years back. All ministers are zero, MGR is one. Only then it has value. That kind of a thing will happen if you have too much charisma also. We'll have to see how Narendra Modi will do. Anyway. So discussion as a sham process to let people let off their steam. Then, get going anyway. This is what he found. Okay. So, is a company as a platform for the talents of one that extraordinary individual whom I brought. He is going to now make all the difference to the company. Right? It's a weak general and a strong lieutenant kind of a model. Genius with 1,000 helpers. People are to be very plastic so that they're very malleable and ductile and all that you need. So this is what Jim Collins says. Jim Collins says, I see leadership like this, these companies will go nowhere. At least today's scheme of things, he says these companies will go nowhere. He calls them as failed leadership. By contrast, he said in his sample there are some great leadership attributes which he found. And what are those? He said leaders had a paradoxical blend of personal humility and intense professional will. He says personal humility is extremely important. Channel their ego away from themselves into larger goal of building a greater company. Ambition is institution and not themselves. That's ambition. And he talked about a window and a mirror approach. In fact, Modi does it very well. In his Gujarat model, he always used to do it. The idea is, if there is a great success, look out of the window. You say, I have not done, others have done it. That's the window approach. If there is a great success, look out of the window. If there is a great failure, go and look at the mirror. You say, what's my problem? Even now he has told all his secretaries, I will stand by you, but you better take right decisions. I will stand. That's the window and the mirror approach. He says good leaders must exhibit that. You should be able to have the window and the mirror by your side. What he was saying. And he said a few things. He said faith was very, very important. Unwavering faith is our biggest raw material for a solid leader. Is what he is saying in his study. Significant life experiences that spark, right? Inner development. So he touched this very word which I was actually getting, although there is no way to explain what is this, how will inner development will happen. That's what a lot of things you'll see in Bhagavad Gita and this kind of thing. How is this inner development? What is this world inside? How do you transact the world inside? How will you do nivritti along with pravritti? That's why Adi Shankaracharya said the same thing. Is that inner world must be balanced with the outside world. That pair of words have a lot of meaning. Nivritti is inner world, pravritti is outside world. That's what he also talked about, which I showed you. And he said luck is a positive factor and a very strong religious belief people had, such leaders. So all that he said. So these are some of the things I see in Bhagavad Gita. And over and above, there are a few other interesting ideas that I find in Bhagavad Gita, which I thought I will share with you in a few slides. Now, Bhagavad Gita, again, you can't read looking for a chapter on leadership. You have to keep reading the sloka with this lens, and this is the research. You have to really tap ideas which you connect to. That is my research. So, having read these 700 slokas a few times, these are some of the things I found in this text. I found that a great leader will eventually outgrow the vision from a very narrow perspective of what is in it for me. What is in it for me puts very serious limitation up to which your leadership will grow. Beyond that, it will not grow. Krishna very categorically argues it in many different ways in the text. What is in it for me will just go up to a point. There are very transactional leaders, whereas they can't be inspirational leaders. In chapter 12, he uses a very nice statement. I have seen in some great leaders this in action. He says, Yasmat na advijeta lokaha, lokat na advijeta chayaha. He says, a leader is one who is afraid of no one. That many leaders practice. Because of power, position, endowment of resources, they are able to do. He says, an inspirational leader will make that happen on the other side. None of them will also be afraid of the leader. It's a very subtle balance. I am not afraid of anyone and nobody is afraid of me. You have to create that kind of ambience. See, there was this great doctor called Dr. Me. He created a world-class enterprise called Arvind Eye Hospital. He retired at the age of 58 and he was actually discharged from the army at the age of 27. Legs were shaking, severe attack of arthritis. They said, you are good for nothing. So they disposed him off. This 27-year-old man is crestfallen. He comes to his native place, which happens to be Madurai, and then he joins the government hospital and he is a doctor. He retires at the age of 59. At the age of 59, he set on to create a world-class enterprise. Today, John Hopkins School of Medicine, Harvard Institute of Medical Sciences doctors have a 2-year waiting time to intern at Aravind Eye Hospital, Madurai, because they want to learn something from that hospital. This hospital has gone to such a level. And I have done some work, I used to go there and so on. A few nurses I asked, what is great about Dr. V? They didn't utter this shloka, but they said this in essence. They said, sir, we are not afraid of him, he can do it, he is also not. More or less they said that. The nearest I can pick is this shloka which that nurses and paramedical staff articulated what kind of a person he is. That's what he is saying. Ability to dramatically transform. You know what is the hallmark of a leader? My own understanding is a leader is a 10,000 volts. If you touch, it will energize you for a lifetime. They are real leaders. Leaders are 10,000 volts live energy. That's an inspirational leader. Inspirational leaders are like that. You have far and few between. You don't have too often, but they can make a difference. Such a huge difference they can make. And they can leave behind an impact that guides a very large number of people and organizations for a long time to come. And lastly, there is a very important principle of mutual dependence that they very strongly believe in. And there are some nitty-gritty details. I will go through some of them. And things like leadership is, Krishna paints a situation in which leadership is far more challenging. He gives a few ideas which are very interesting to look at. He says leadership is not easy as we think, it's far more burdensome. I'll get those shlokas. And then there is a nice concept called Titiksha. To me, the number one and probably the last requirement for a great leader is Titiksha. I'll talk about the Titiksha. In Bhagavad Gita, in 40 places, Krishna has talked about it again and again and again. He talked about Titiksha. He said, without that, Arjuna, you'll never flower as a leader. You can never make a cut for a leader. So I'm going to talk that in more detail. I have no sense of time. Somebody has to keep time, and you just say enough, stop it. Okay, so in chapter 3, first of all, he talked about very vividly in a few shlokas what is called leading by example. He says leadership starts there. He says, Yad yad acharati sreshtaha, taddad eva itare janaha, sa yad pramanam kurute, lokas tat anuvartate. He says, Arjuna, first lesson you understand. people will very keenly watch a leader. To that extent, in a few slokas he says, a leader is as though who is put in a glass house with 360 degree. Leaders don't realize it. Very intensely people will watch a leader. So, if you can't walk the talk, your credibility as a leader will be, nobody will tell. Dramatically it will be discounted. That's the point he actually very much articulated with this shloka. He says, Te yat pramanam kurute, what they said is important. I have seen in several companies, they say all kinds of cost cutting and all that, and they spend money like anything. Now the rest of the organization knows what to do. You don't need rocket science to understand what to do. That such things are a low level leadership. You have to demonstrate. You say something, you have to demonstrate, otherwise things are not going to work at all. Edward Deming, when he was a great quality guru, this is one single point agenda he had. He said, in fact, Ford, he went to 1952, he went to Japan and did some wonderful work and then returned back to US. Then Ford called him. Ford secretary called him a dozen times, he did not respond. Last time when Ford himself called, he said, he said he was busy. When Ford called, he said, I will come. Chairman of Ford Motor Company. So he went. Apparently Deming was taken to this thing, and so he said, here is my top management. I believe you have done some great work on quality. Please help us with quality. He said, fine, I will. After introducing him in a very ceremonial way, Ford walked away and Deming walked away. So Ford turned around, he found somebody was coming behind him, and it was Edward Deming. So he was stunned. He asked, what is this? He said, if you are not here, I have no business here, I will also go. If you are not here, nothing will happen in this organization. Lots of such stories in Edward Deming's life. Quality, greatest quality guru, who lived 93 years, passed away about 7-8 years back. Great work. That's what he's saying. He says, I have nothing to do. Name partasi kartavyam trishu lokeshu kanchana. The greatest charm of leadership is, I have know what is in it for me, but I will put my best effort. That's not easy. It's going to be very, very difficult for me to do. And so he says, even if I have nothing to do, I will still do. You know why? Because people are looking at me. If I park myself in a very cozy restaurant, everybody will start parking themselves in a cozy restaurant. It's not going to work. Leadership is not possible. I was reminded of a movie. When I was reading all these shlokas, I was thinking about it. This Kamal Haasan, there was one movie called Nayaka. I don't know how many of you remember. This is about this one Dada in Bombay. This movie had two parts. The first part of the movie was, this fellow is a thug. He comes and he is really terror unleashed. That's how he becomes very powerful and very famous and all that. That's the first part of the story. You should look at the second part of the story. The second part of the story, he gets killed finally, anyway, in the story. Because one of the constable whom he lynched, his son came and killed him. That's a different story anyway. But the message is very important. The second part of the story, in that movie, it so happens that this Nayaka, who was so unleashing so much violence, actually did not want violence. He went through a transformation, but his followers were not ready. He turned this side, followers thought this fellow has to be finished. Because that is what he practiced. So leaders have no degrees of freedom. What they do, they have no control. They have no control on what action will be taken, because they have demonstrated something. He has a very big argument with his daughter towards the end of the movie, before he gets killed. He says, he pleads that I have changed, but daughter says, no, you are not changed because your people are continuing violence. He says, he pleads helplessness. He says, I am not able to, do. That's what he is talking. So this walking the talk is extremely important for leaders, that I don't see many leaders practice. It's not very easy to say. Krishna actually talks about it. And he talks about, he says, Yedihi aham navarteyam. If I don't do work, Jatu karmani atindritaha, I don't do work, I just say, you all do work, I will enjoy. He says, I will create a crisis. Because people are not going to take it very easily. And they know how, in fact, this corruption that has gone to such a level in this country has all started, I don't want to name, I don't want to get into politics and so on, but people, you are all quite a few elderly people, you know what has happened in the 70s in this country and so on. When the top does something, it flows. You cannot stop. The crisis stops. That's why they say bottleneck is rightfully at the top. The bottleneck is not at the bottom, it is figuratively also it is at the top. Krishna points to that. He says, you will unleash a crisis. You will unleash a crisis because people will very acutely watch what you are doing, and that is what they will say. I will have to do several shlokas. I am not going to get into it. I'll just leave it. Then he talks about a very important concept called Titiksha. Some 40 places he has spoken. 3-4 I will show, not more than that. Look at the first sloka here. It says, Matra sparsast kaunteya, Sitoshna sukha dukkataha, Agama paino nityaha, Tam titiksha swabharata. There is a definition called Titiksha. He is telling something very interesting. He says, Arjuna, as long as you are living, you are active, no? You are living means your pancha indriyas are working. I hear somebody saying, I see something happening. That's how you live. The stimulus are all coming like this. They are called matras, pancha tanmatras. The sound, tanmatra called sound comes through the ear. The tanmatra called image comes through the eye. These are called tanmatras, that's a technical word. He says, as long as you are in sparsh, in touch with the tanmatras, which means you are living normally. As long as you are living normally, your organs are all working properly. That's what he is trying to say. As long as that is happening, you know, Arjuna, what will happen? He says it will blow hot and cold. Sita and Ushna, Sukha and Dukkha. He says it has to blow hot and cold. And do you know what is the antithesis to that? Every organization, every business school is told only good things can happen. That's what we teach our students also. That's what a school kid is told. That is why the moment she didn't get something, she goes and jumps from the house and commits suicide. Life is a roller coaster ride. For a leader, if he does not understand that there is roller coaster in everybody's life, he will never become a leader. You cannot go to cloud 9 when something good happens and get into depression and go to psychologists if things are not working. You are not at all a leader. Your leadership bandwidth is your battery is discharged. That's what he is saying. He is saying, Sita, Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha. There is a world of duality which will actually pounce on you all the time. A leadership strength is your ability to take it. Your ability to take it is called Titiksha. He says, Tam Titiksha Swabharata. So the definition of Titiksha is ability for a person to say that in life favorable and in fact there is a whole dictionary of duality. Good, bad, like, don't like, positive, negative, Sita, Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha. You can write a whole thing of duality. He says, how much are you able to mentally are you ready to take it? I mean, you work, you put your targets, put your best effort, plan and do everything. There's a good chance things will not work out. Lot of people are not able to take it. He says, the most important raw material to be a leader is you should develop Titiksha. Understand life is a roller coaster ride. He says, Sama Dukkha Sukham. Sukha and Dukkha, you are able to take it. You say, okay, I will handle it. If you go to that level, he says you are a Dhira. The word Dhira, in our language, Dhira means one who is very brilliant. That's a word common parlance we use. That's not the meaning. Dhira comes from the root Di. Di means Buddhi. Dhira is one who is able to use his sense of discrimination so well. He's able to say, okay, things have gone bad, let me take it. I'll still ride on the roller coaster and see where I will go. That kind of a mental frame is what is called Tatiksha. So he says, the person who has Sama Dukkha Sukham Dhiram Saha Amritatvaya Kalpate. He says, I will put him on the pedestal of immortality. He will go to that level. Nothing can stop on earth. Nothing can stop on him because he has now learned this art. Life, business life, personal life, everything is only a roller coaster. Do you know it? Do you have a frame of mind to take it? That's what he says. That's why he said Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. He said, what is yoga? Yoga is Samatva here. Are you able to get this Samatva? Are you able to take things as unfold? I find that's the difference between great leaders and ordinary leaders. Ordinary leaders are not able to take. They are simply not able to take. Whereas a great leader is able to develop a high amount of titiksha. In one shloka, so beautifully he has given a management framework. Look at this shloka. The shloka says, Sukha dukke same kritva Labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsesi. He gives a piece of advice to Arjuna. And you know what he is saying? There is an activity here. This is with reference to war. Right? He says there is an activity. Yuddhaya. Tato yuddhaya. Please engage in war. Through that, Krishna is communicating, engage in activity. Here the activity happens to be war. Now he is saying what will happen. If you engage in activity, activity will always lead to outcome. And what is the outcome in a war? The outcome is jaya or ajaya. Win or lose. Now, win or lose by itself does not create anything for me. When I assess it, I get upset. Outcome does not tell you anything. In your personal life, in your professional life also, it is not about outcome. This is the total sales I made is only an outcome. When you put it onto an assessment, then you get upset or you become happy. So, jaya or ajaya is an outcome, and the assessment of that will give you labha or alabha. Either you benefited or you lost. The outcome must be assessed through a performance metric. And the moment your outcome has been assessed, then your feelings will come. He says sukha and dukkha. So he uses three pairs of duality to explain. He says, and the same kritva, you should use it for everything. You know what he is saying? He is saying sukha dukkhe same kritva, labha labho same kritva, jaya jayo same kritva. If you develop that level of this titiksha, if you can develop, and you go and fight, which means engage in your activity, put your best foot forward, commit yourself, engage in activity, naivam papam avapsesi, you will not feel anything. Papam is not papa punya, not that. You will not get affected. We are all getting affected by the day. Work is affecting me. For a great leader, work will not affect. And where will it come? He says titiksha. So he has given a management framework. Every activity will throw three types of duality. And if you can develop titiksha and the three types of duality, you are a great leader. That's what he is saying here. And in many places he has said, I will go to the last reference. This is again a beautiful reference. He says, sama dukkha sukha. He says, who is a great person with a great character and leadership? He uses several examples. I have seen all these examples in some of our professional life. He says, sama dukkha sukha swastaha, sama loshtashma kanchanaha, tulya priya priyo dhiraha, tulya nindatma samstutihi, mana apamanayos tulyaha, tulya mitra aripakshayoho. So there are several examples. Look at all these examples. Sukha dukkha I already spoken. So let's not talk about sukha and dukkha again. Now he says, sama loshta ashma kanchana. Loshta is actually pebble, stone. Ashma is mud, clay. Kanchana is gold. What he's saying is, if you take all the three of identical shape, one is gold, one is mud, another is stone, if you start blinking, you will get into corruption very soon. You should not blink on looking at all the three, you should not blink. You say, all right. Moment you say, oh, this is more valuable, then you are getting into a problem. Somewhere it will drive you. That is what he is coming to. That's why he uses that example. He says, temptations is not in the domain of leaders. So that is the one example he gave. Then he says, tulya. Tulya means equal. That's why tola. Pan is called tola, na? Because it is tulya, equal. He says, tulya priyo apriyo. A great leader is one who, I may have likes and dislikes. I may like you. I may not like you. You should not bring it into the leadership domain. That is a personal preference. A leader must be able to raise above this duality called I like you and I don't like you. That's the next example he gives. Tulya, priya, apriyo, dhiraha. He is a dhira. He uses his power of discrimination so well. Then he says, this is very interesting. I found it in lots of examples. Tulya ninda atma samstutihi. He says a great leader will be able to take criticism so well. Ninda can take criticism so well and will not be flattered by flattery. Atma samstuti. He gives two examples. This is where a lot of leaders succumb also. And if you are not letting positive dissent in your group, I will tell you what will happen. You will call a McKinsey or IAM professor who will come and say the same thing, for which you will give a fortune. That is what will happen. If you don't allow a little bit of positive dissent, it is all not a great thing. That's the example he gives. And you cannot get flattered. If you get flattered, you are going to make mistakes. So he gives both those examples. Tulya Ninda and Atma Samstutihi. Then he says, Mana Apamanayos Tulyaha. There is an activity which gave you honor, or some activity gave you dishonor. People are not able to take dishonor. They are average leadership. Krishna says, that duality also you should be able to surpass. Take it here, whatever comes, take it. That is the hallmark of leadership. Mana apamanayos tulyaha. Can you stand by with all your credibility and take what comes? That is called mana apamanayos tulyaha. Then he says, this is again, I have seen plenty in offices, in my own working life also I have seen. He says, tulya mitra aripakshayoho. See, in a meeting, you know what happens? Moment you say, we are conducting a meeting, you are saying something. You know how I understand it? First I find out you belong to my camp or opposite camp. Only then this sentence makes a meaning to me. First I have to map you into this domain. Mitra Paksha or Ari Paksha. That's the example Krishna is giving. Moment you belong to the opposite camp, I will read the wrong thing from you. Moment you belong to my camp, you would have told a nonsense, but I will still read a lot of sense in it. They are very weak leaders, vulnerable leaders. That is the example he gives. Tulya Mitra Aripakshayoho. Sarvaramba Parityagi. Those who are able to engage in all activities like that, go to that level of samatva. He says, Gunatitaha sa uchyate. His person is of a great character. He is really of a great character who will measure up to his yardstick of leadership. That's what he is actually saying here. So, lots of emphasis for leadership on samatva. Samatva is very important. In other words, Krishna is talking about psychological homeostasis. We are all physiological homeostatic animals. Moment outside temperature changes, our body temperature will automatically change. That is homeostasis. That is at a physical level. What he is saying is, if you want to become a great leader, you should develop psychological homeostasis. Because that's where leaders are trapped. You know how leaders are trapped. You can just get the bad thing out of that person. We have put him on the mat. He says, don't. That is why he is talking all these examples again and again and again. One last issue I will talk, and then I will, which is about samatva. Samatva, mutual dependence is an extremely important value. There is one beautiful sloka which conveys it so beautifully. I will take only that. In chapter 3, it gives a beautiful sloka. He says, Devan bhavayata anena, te deva bhavayantu vaha, parasparam bhavay. There is an axiom. In Bhagavad Gita, there are a lot of axioms. There is one important axiom he is saying. What is that axiom? Parasparam bhavayantaha shreyaha param avapsyata. Krishna says, Arjuna, know one principle. The day you are able to understand value of mutual dependence, you will reach the pinnacle of success. Paraspara bhava. Parasparam bhavayantaha shreyaha param avapsyata. And the living example, and there are several meaning to it. Paraspara bhava, boss, moment a boss says, I am the boss, and he very seriously means the I part of it, he will be alone. He will be very alone, whatever be the organization. If you say, I am doing everything and all these are 1,000 helpers and all that, you will become very alone. So this Paraspara bhava is between boss and subordinate. The Paraspara bhava is between government and society. That's what Anna Hazare showed. And one person can go and sit in Jantar Mantar with a white cap, and 100,000 people will go to Freedom Park in Bangalore and sit. They have shown politicians you can't go scot-free. There is limit to everything. Systems are very, very dependable. Interdependence is a core principle in business, core principle in success. That's what he is saying. So there is a mutual dependence between government and society. There is a mutual dependence between man and nature. Whole lot of these summits that we are talking about are all coming from that. There's a whole dependence between living and non-living. It's on a much higher level. We have to imbibe, a great leader has to imbibe the art of mutual dependence. That's what another principle Krishna says. There are many more, but I picked up a few of them just to weave them around. I thought I will just stop here. If you are interested in these kinds of thoughts, I have plenty of material I keep writing every month and putting it into my website. You can actually look at it. But I would be very keen to do a little bit of discussion also. If you think there are issues which we should discuss, I think a few minutes we must do before, we take a break for dinner.
Any question?
It need not necessarily be questions. We can share, I was only provocating your thinking in one way or the other. So, if there is some thoughts you want to pour into this audience, most welcome. Questions are also welcome. If you know answer, I can tell. If I don't know, I will say I don't know. It's as simple as that.
You actually didn't answer why Arjun decided to fight.
Decided to fight.
Yes.
That you have to read the 18 chapters. I only gave you a little bit of that. So that story is contained here. How do you change his perspective? How do you make him see beyond something which looked obvious? I mean, what all he said were right. But great leaders cannot stop there. In other words, I think the most important message is, it's a good question because, when we are in great confusion, what is the message there? Forget about Bhishma, killing and all, leave it. There is a subtle message here. What he is trying to say, if you are in great confusion, now the alternatives look very convincing and so on. One way to solve that problem, you step back and build a bigger picture and see where this will fit. That's what Krishna actually tried to do to him. He said, you are so focused on this, which seems to be at this level of abstraction, what you are saying is right. But to develop a clarity, he gave him a slightly bigger picture, in which he says, now you put it in there and understand it. Maybe your understanding and your perspectives can change. That lesson, I think, sometimes when the options are too compelling and a bit of confusing, maybe difficult and so on, best thing is to step back. And two things we can do: extend the notion of time to a slightly longer thing, and get a bigger picture in which you look at the problem again. You may actually understand the problem and a solution in a slightly different way. That's one thing which is coming, which should have happened.
You described the first scene when Arjuna goes to the middle of the battleground, looks on both sides.
Correct.
Loses arm and food. And then he says that I don't want to fight this war anymore. And then after that you asked a question, is Arjuna a good leader? Can you assess whether a person is a good leader or not from one situation? Or does the question have to be answered over a period of time? Or can that one situation really truly, maybe he went through a momentary lapse of reason, maybe he went through a momentary period where he needed somebody to give him clarity, which again is a hallmark of a great team, because a leader might lose perspective at one time, another member of the team steps in and says, hey, by the way, you can look at it this way, which is what Krishna did. And ultimately, so he still would qualify as a great leader because he led them to victory.
Fair enough. That's all right. All that I would possibly say, I think I'm perfectly in line with what you are saying. The only thing I might want to say is, I think it's very important for us to realize the value of, and the criticality and the value of a leadership has to be measured in the most demanding situation. That's a very important reference milestone for us. There may be, some lesser kind of issues and all that. So from that perspective, I looked at it. But in any case, what you say is right. This may be one snapshot. But the point is, at that clinching, very decisive thing, the leadership is really put to its test. That's all I was trying to, say that. But you are right. We need to really go on either sides, and that was not the reason why I brought it. But the fact that the one interesting thing that perhaps we get here is, which I think at least for me it's a personal revelation, is it is quite possible that you may not be at peace with yourself, and then your entire leadership thing is hugely challenged. That is coming. If you are not in peace with yourself, you will actually find it extremely difficult to transact whatever is the level of learning. We have our own personal experience. Occasions in life we are like that. Gravity maybe, it's not a matter of gravity. It's a question of saying that if the inside is churned, you lose your strength. Strength of ability to think, strength to execute, all of them are somewhere pouring out of that. That is a very important element which we cannot afford to ignore. So the Titiksha and all are coming from there. No, Titiksha is coming from where? It is coming from, it is not outside. It is a frame of mind. Frame of mind is inside. Why is he talking about Titiksha? It has nothing to do with outside. Events will unfold. If you start jumping, I keep telling my students, on mind there are a lot of very interesting things, mind game and so on. I keep telling, very jokingly, that unseasoned leader or unseasoned person for that matter is one who will remote control his peace of mind to the whole world. You know what it means? You will say something to me. I will get upset. Actually, you should get upset. You said something which is not what I am. You said something very bad about me. Actually, very rationally, if you see, you should be upset. I should not be upset. That's not how I behave. How do I behave? I have given remote control to all of you. So the day you choose to press, I am gone. These are all inside matter. There is nothing with outside matter. So one can choose to remote control their peace of mind to the whole world, which is what many are doing today. Somebody said something and I get upset. It's a foolish thing in a way if you look at it. I should be upset for what I think. So that is an inside part. I think is an inside part. Your response is an outside part. So that kind of... So somewhere this inner part is, I think, becoming more and more... maybe we are aware of it, didn't think about it. These are only bringing it. Then there is a awe factor. Oh yeah, I didn't think about it.
So is there a business opportunity there for creating coaches on how to guide and address that?
No, coaches are there, they are doing it on a non-business fashion. Some of the traditional CEOs are doing that actually. But yeah, so possibly. I think there are, even if you read a lot of Peter Sanjay and even Cohen, Stephen Covey, there's a lot of spirituality they are talking here. They are all moving to this side now. They have now realized you have to now drill the hole and go inside. If this is not there, this Adi Shankara is, he has written some shlokas. People think they are all shlokas for God and all that. He wrote a shloka called Dakshinamurti. It is a magnum opus. Dakshinamurti Stotra he wrote. For all people who know Shankaracharya, that's a magnum opus. I will tell you the first line of the first shloka. It's a masterpiece in psychology. First line says, Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nija Antargatam. You know what he's saying? He's saying the world is Darpanam. Darpanam means mirror. He says, my dear friend, understand, this world is a mirror. And what you see in the mirror is what is inside. I very strongly believe in it. There are some teachers in a school, the child does nothing. You see the amount of cruelty they do to the child, it is coming from inside. It is nowhere outside. You do good, I do cruelty. Where is it coming from? They are all inside here. You can only do what you are. You will deal, if you deal people very shabbily, that's your value system, that's all you have. You have no goodness. If you deal people with a great sense of respect, that's what you have. That's what he says. He says, Nija Antargatam Pashyan Atmani. The world outside is, he says, Aishankara says, you go and see your face in a mirror. Right? Your face doesn't look good, don't do anything to the mirror. Nothing is possible with the mirror, you have to do something about here. So Bimba is very important, not the Pratibimba. He says the world is a Pratibimba, Bimba is inside. Like that there are ideas, which are all actually, if you think about it, there's a lot of sense in what they are saying. They're all psychological ideas. You are able to relate it. People are very good because that's what they are here. People are very bad because that's what they are. Nothing can happen. You do anything, your outside training, anything and all will change nothing because inside is the issue. Yeah.
You talked about how leaders have to take up duality and how they have to take it into practice. Ultimately, in the end, you are trying to say that inner and outer which against the duality.
Huh?
Now you are saying inner and outer which against the duality.
Yes.
You are talking about psychology, outer world.
Yeah.
And again, you are landing up in the same duality.
No. This is a different type of duality. It doesn't belong to that duality. The duality I am talking about are all in the outside world.
That's what. You are again getting the outer and inner. That's a duality.
Well, the inside has no duality. As a matter of fact, the inside has been discussed in great detail. I am not into any of those. The differentiating factor between inside and outside is inside has no notion of duality. The notion of duality is a mapping your mind did. I'll give you a simple example. Please tell me, if somebody says jalebi is good, jamun is good, gulab jamun is good, I can very easily prove gulab jamun is not good. Because if gulab jamun is good, all of us must eat 1 kilogram of gulab jamun. He doesn't come anywhere near the gulab jamun, I eat 1 kilogram of gulab jamun. So good, this world of duality is a mapping done inside. Inside us nothing. It is the mapping. So it is a mapping process which we need to actually address. Because if the goodness is on the object must generate the same amount of goodness everywhere. It's not doing. What you like, I don't like. What I like, you don't like. So the like and dislike is not in the object, it is in the subject. So inside us, no duality. The duality is mapped inside, that has to be addressed. Anyway, if it gets too complicated, we get into all these. Let's not get into all these. It requires a different way of reflection. We need to reflect on some of these ideas. Then, somewhere. Maybe one last.
Can you throw some light on leadership organization? Because in the last chapter of
Leadership?
how when the leadership
I didn't.
is there any relevance in Bhagavad where leadership has to promote
So succession issues are not, I don't know. I haven't looked at it from that perspective. I don't think in Bhagavad Gita there is any, no, as far as I know, such an angle is not being discussed. Maybe it is there, but to the best of my knowledge, it is not there.